Excuse me. Man, I am sweaty just from worship already, just singing. And y'all thank the band. They work so hard to do what they do here. And we appreciate them so much, just giving so much of themselves to lead all of us. Just grateful for them. Hey, real quick, let me point you back to last Sunday and what a great day that was of just spreading out all over Auburn, Opelika, Beauregard, even into Montgomery, and praying for our community. You know, being sent out of this building, being reminded the church is not the building, the church is wherever we go. And such a great time of just being together and praying and inviting God to do what only God can do in our community, to bring hope and healing and bring His very presence right here, and so that people will know Him and love Him, right? And so it was just a great day, and I'm just reminded as we were gathered at our location in Beauregard that, you know, we talk about doing things and serving God, and that usually is typically with our hands, you know, like we go out and do something, but also the Bible says that prayer is also the work. Prayer is the work. And, you know, the doing is important, and, you know, James talks very much about that, but also we have to be reminded, sometimes only God can do things that God can do, you know. We can't do things that He can do. So we want to pray and invite Him to do what only He can do. I'm just really interested to see what God does through last Sunday, through each of us in our church, in this community, because I believe that He will. So we had over 200 people spread out all over 10 different sites. We had, and I forgot to bring my phone up, but we had over 800 views at 9 o'clock on Facebook Live. We had well over 200 that watched the 10:30 video, and then I think close to 800 or 1,000 that watched the recap video. So a lot of people were actually engaged in what happened last week, and so just a great time. Thank you for being a part of that. Even the folks that were out of town were a sight for us. If you were somewhere else and maybe logged in with us, you were a sight. That was really, really great, so I appreciate that. All right, now next Sunday is our Dream Night happening at 4:30. This is an opportunity for us to gather as a church, to fellowship together, to worship together. We're going to eat together afterwards. There'll be food trucks. We're going to have baptisms that night, so we'll be celebrating baptism. And let me just say, if you are somebody who has yet to take that step in baptism, this would be a great night to do that. Or if you'd like to reaffirm your faith in baptism, you can do that next Sunday night. If that's for you, if you're interested in that, would like to talk more about it, Pat Bethay will be in the lobby at the Next Steps corner after the service, and he would love to talk with you about that. So baptisms also be a part of that. And then I'm going to be sharing some vision, just some conversations that we've been having internally about the vision that God is welling up in us, especially as we get ready for our 20th anniversary in January. And, you know, what is God calling us to do? What is that step that we need to take as a church? So I'll be sharing that also next Sunday night. So we definitely want you to be a part of that at 4:30. Marcus will give a little bit more specific instructions at the end today. All right, well, so fall is officially here, and I know that not because it's gotten any cooler, because it has not because leaves are falling off the trees, they're not, except for maybe because of the heat, but I know fall is officially here because of one thing. Oh, you got me. Football, yes. Football is back, and oh my gosh, it's just so funny to me every fall in this town, I guess I'm sure in every college town around the nation, but the conversation changes dramatically, like all through the week. Everything begins to change. What we talk about, you know, it's just like the general atmosphere and tenor of our town just kind of gets raised up, the excitement, the anticipation. You know, we just spend a lot more energy. And even if you don't like football, you're just talking more about how you don't like football in the fall. So either way, football is being talked about one way or the other. And that's just kind of the way it goes. And, you know, the conversation is just like, oh, my gosh, yeah, you know, Auburn beat Oregon. That was so great. And then we kind of beat Tulane last night, and that was great. And, you know, and Alabama just steamrolling over everybody. And how did South Carolina get beat by North Carolina? What happened there? And FSU, are they a team this year? I mean, like, what happened with that? Tennessee got beat by Georgia State? What in the world? I mean, you know, like, what? God bless them. Any Vols fans? I mean, would you raise your hand today? I'm sorry, we love you. We're for you. We're with you, okay? We get that. You know, it's like, just hang in there. There's another day coming. God is good, and He will work with you somehow. Anyway, so there's all that. But you know what I'm talking about, right? The conversation is up. And then we around here, we gather in the cathedral called Jordan Hare to pay homage, right? We go there. We anticipate going there. Now, let me just say something. Let me just make some observations. Now, these observations have been made ever since the intersection of football and church. So this is not new. But it's amazing how much time, energy, resources, and attention that we give to football, isn't it? Or baseball, or whatever your sport is, but I'm just talking about football. Like, man, we plan for the game. Like, we work our schedule around it, don't we? And especially if we're going to the game. And especially if we're going to tailgate and go to the game. It's like we're thinking about food, we got our resources invested in it. We're getting our kids. If you got kids, you're dolling them up in Auburn gear or Alabama gear, wherever you're going, and you're taking them to the stadium, and when they get there, they know the cheers, don't they? They know the chants. They know everything. And then we stand in that stadium, hands raised sometimes. We go nuts like wild people. We're singing all the songs, living on a prayer. It's like we're doing all that. We're all into that, right? Then we're posting pics on social media to all of our friends who want to know what we did at the game. Pictures like this one. Like, this is a picture, it's got orange and blue up there, and I think the caption was something like, look, God painted this guy orange and blue just for Auburn today. Because clearly God is an Auburn fan. So there's that. Don't email me on that one, all right? I get it. I know what we're doing. I'm an Auburn fan. I know. Boy, we just go with me today, okay? So we do that. Even if you go up north, if you're from the north, you know football is just as rabid up there. Like, you go to a place like South Bend, Indiana. Like, I went several years ago to Notre Dame, and I was at the stadium, but then I went to this place. What is that right there? Does anybody know what that's called? Does anybody know what that's really called? No. I don't even think the people at Notre Dame actually know what that mosaic is called. All we know is that's Touchdown Jesus. What sacrilegious Notre Dame people, I don't know. I don't think you can do that. But anyway, it's just this crazy thing that we do with all of that. And listen, here's the thing. I'm a football fan. I get it. Been one all my life. I love it. I love this time of the year and all the attention that's given to it and all this kind of stuff. But it's just curious to me how much we will give ourselves to something like it. And you know what I'm talking about. And if it's not football, it's something else. Like, you go to a secular concert, and people there are all into it, eyes closed, hand raised, you think it was worship, Or, you want to talk about another kind of worship? Go to Best Buy or Walmart on Black Friday. Tell me those people aren't passionate about something. New iPhone's going to come out pretty soon. Go get in line at the iPhone store, because there are going to be a lot of people passionate about that iPhone. You know what I'm saying here? Like, we will give ourselves to things. Football or whatever that thing may be. We'll say the name of Bo Nix 100 times. Last week, this week, or Tua Tagovailoa. Nick Saban. I'm not making fun. I just can't say it. I just don't know it. So I'm working on it. But as much as we have that conversation, how much will we also talk about our faith? Will it rival or equal that much? How many times have we said the name of Jesus Christ? Oh, Rusty, don't do that to me. I'm just saying. In light of all the conversations that we have just surrounding something like football, how much also do we give our heart and our life and our time and our effort and energy and resources to God? So, you know what? God gave us those passions. Like, all the passions that we have, those didn't come from us. They came from God. He gave us the ability to express ourselves in that way. It's just that He gave it to us really for the first priority of worshiping Him, right? To worship Him. Everybody worships something, so we just want to be sure that we're worshiping in that right direction. I think about the definition of worship. This is just from the dictionary. It says, worship is to regard something with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. To regard something with extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. And do we use that same honor, respect, and devotion to do things like train up our kids in our faith? Do we prepare ourselves for Sunday morning? Are we ready, anticipating, looking forward to Sunday and worshiping God and being with people? Do we clear out the schedule and make sure that we're there? How about our small group during the week? Are we committed to that? Is it a priority for us? Are we going to be there? Are we pushing everything else aside? Are we getting our hearts ready for all of these things? Is that what we're doing with our devotion? So those are just questions that we're going to be looking at. We're starting this new series today, as Dustin said. It's called Make Me Feel Guilty About Everything I Love. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that. It's called Into His Presence, because we just want to look at what is a biblical understanding of worship. This thing that God says we not only should do, but we need to do. It is a part of who we are as followers of Jesus Christ. It is a part of how our marriage is biblically correct. It's a part of how our relationships are good. It's a part of every part of our life. So we just want to make sure we understand, what is it that God is calling us to do that is that integral to our life. Let me give you another definition of worship. Biblical worship is the full life response, head, heart, and hands to who God is and to what he has done. And you might think about that in light of Jesus, the great commandment that he gave to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. A full life response to God is what biblical worship is all about. So we're going to be talking about that. Now, what I want to do is today and for the next couple of weeks, we're going to go back into the Old Testament, actually, to talk about this, because there was a pattern of worship that was set a long time ago. And when you go back, you see that when the people of God gathered in the Old Testament, they gathered around something called the tabernacle. The tabernacle was their place of worship. It was the place where they gathered, where prayers were offered, worship was done, where their sins were atoned for. All of these things happened in this place. And so I realize those are little toy figures, but just go with me on this, okay? I just found this picture. It looked good. So this would have been like what an ancient tabernacle would look like. There's this sort of like a fencing around the whole thing. There's a gate right down here on this end. You would enter through that gate, and to enter through that gate was something very symbolic. We'll get there in just a minute. The first thing that you would see would be an altar for sacrifice. You would come in there and you would make a sacrifice first. The next thing would be something called the laver. It was a bowl and it had water in it, and it represented cleansing. And you would clean your hands there, especially the priest, as they were about to go into what was called the Holy of Holies. The priest would go in there, and then inside that was another place called the Most Holy Place. And in there was the Ark of the Covenant, and God's presence rested at the Ark of the Covenant, but only the high priest could go in there. And so it was very much a way for them to worship, sort of a process, and it started by entering through that gate. Now, actually, modern worship, most churches have a process, a way to worship. When we come here, we gather in this place. There's usually some sort of an opening song. There's like a call to worship like Dustin did today. There's more music. Then there's the breaking open of the word. And then we respond to that through worship and by giving of our tithes and offerings, or, committing our life to God, driving a stake in the ground, making a decision. Then we leave this place with a prayer and a blessing, and we go out to serve God until we gather again, right? Like there's a way that we do that, and we still are doing that today. Now, when you look in the Psalms, the writer of the Psalms, David, had so much to say about worship, and a lot of it was actually related to the tabernacle and his own experience. So back to the passage that Dustin read to get us going, Psalm 100. Let me just kind of reread that. I want to work through that for just a minute. He said this. He said, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs." It's like his idea of worship was loud. Shout for joy to the Lord. It was like back then, worship was very active. It was very expressive, outspoken. And he says, come with gladness. Even if there's a sense of heaviness in your life and in your heart, come with a sense of gladness that God is going to be there to help you. Come before him with joyful songs, singing out. And he goes on and says, "Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture." Basically, what he's saying is, you need to understand that God is God, and you are not. Another reason why we should worship. Because God is God, and I am not him. I need him to be God in my life. And so in worship, I'm reminded that I'm putting God at the rightful place as creator and Lord of my life. Let me skip down to verse 5 now. The end of that is, "For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues throughout all generations." Again, we worship God. Why? Because he is good. He is the ultimate good. He's a good that we don't even truly understand, and he's been good from the beginning. He's good now, and he's going to be good forever. And he's faithful through all generations. He will never not be faithful. Let me just put it that way. He will never give up. He'll never give out. He'll never fall asleep. He'll never leave you hanging. He is faithful throughout all generations. That's why we would do this. But then verse 4, he says this specifically, "Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name." That is a reference to the tabernacle. Enter that gate into the tabernacle with thanksgiving. That's literally what you were supposed to do when you got to the gate, is to put yourself in an attitude of thanksgiving. To enter into the court, once you got through the gate, to enter into the court with praise. You're coming with something to God. And so when we come to God today, it's really no different. Think about the gate as the doors to the building. When we come through here, we come with what? Thanksgiving, with praise. We come prepared to worship our God, to be together with other believers, and to put Him at the highest place. So in general, when we think about this, I come up with like 3 main ideas just related to this today for us as we kind of get this series going. Number 1 is that really worship is about the attitude of our heart. Because worship is truly, it begins in this place. Our heart is what we call the seat of our emotions. It's the seat of our passions. It's like that's the place where love is developed in our life. And so like when you fall in love with somebody and you say this phrase, I love you with all of my brain. Isn't that what you say? That's so romantic. I love you with all of my intellect, darling. I love you with all of the reasoning I can muster because you're pretty much the best option I got. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love you with all of my physical strength. Look at my biceps. No, we don't say that. We say, I love you with all of my heart, because what we're trying to say is, I love you with the very depth of this place that God has designed in me, and I love you out of that place. And then what happens is, there's this sense of response that comes from that. We respond because we want to do things to show them how much we love them. We have to tell them, right? And we think about them, and we, post something on social media. Maybe we don't do that. That'd be bad early. So anyway, but we don't do that. But then, guys, we spend our money, don't we? Yeah, we respond. Because you start taking them to dinner and then buying stuff and stuff like that. And so now we're doing something as a result of how we feel in our heart. You tracking with me? This is kind of how this goes. Worship is like an expression of love too. God, I love you. And I got to show you that. I want to express that through my life and everything that I do. And even on Sunday morning, I want to come. I want to open up my mouth. And I want to sing. And trust me, if you're not a singer, I'm with you. I get it. But you can either mouth the word watermelon, and it gets you going. It's like, watermelon, watermelon, I don't know what I'm singing, but I'm going to sing. I'm singing. It's like a start there, but say the words. Close your eyes. Think about what's being spoken on that screen. There's this sense of putting this word in my mind and in my heart as I am thinking about God during worship on Sunday mornings. When I go to places like Africa or Nicaragua, man, you go to worship there, if you've been, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those people get after it. I mean, you're standing there, and it's like things are happening around you, and you're like, what was that? What happened there? And, hands are raised, and people are talking and even shouting sometimes, and they're dancing or whatever. They're responding during the message, and it's a lot of activity and all this kind of stuff. And sometimes when, I'm in these other places, I'm like, wow, these people, they're not kidding. They came here ready. And, and then at some point they're going to talk about what happened during their week and, what's been going on. And worship is it's like 2 things. It's like a finish line of what happened that week, and it's a start line for what's going to happen this next week, right? And I think about, man, the way that those people worship is just all out, heart out, full on. And sometimes man, are we getting this right in America? Are we getting this right? I'm kind of self-conscious then, and what are we doing? How am I responding to God? Am I thinking about Him with that type of love and that type of expression even in my own life? And I think about any of the barriers that come to my worship with God during the week or on Sunday mornings. I'm like, what could that be? Except maybe, have I missed Him at some point? Have I just missed Him, in my life? It's I think about this commercial that came on TV a while back, and it was a commercial about this couple from India. The guy was in America, and she was in India, and apparently there was an arranged marriage. And so he's going to meet her for the first time, and he's not happy because he's never seen her. He doesn't know her. All he knows is their parents arranged for them to be married. And so he brings these flowers to the airport, and he's really sad, and you can see his face, and he's like, this is just, he's just this is not going to go well. I can tell I'm never going to be happy with this situation. So he's just waiting. He's doing what he's supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, she comes out of the terminal, and she's this beautiful woman. And he just kind of sits there, and he looks at her, and he goes, You know, he just like brightens up and he's like, okay, this could get better. It may be okay. And then they talk and everything, and all of a sudden everything's getting better. And it's like this whole notion that he had before, which is this is not going to be good and this is a hopeless case, I'm going to be stuck with her for the rest of my life, is now suddenly changed just from one thing. What's the difference? He saw her. And I think about like sometimes, you know, the Sunday morning experience, those folks in Africa, I think that they have seen God somewhere in their life that week and they're coming to be excited about that. Like, I think about my own life, like, have I seen God at work in my life this week? Have I looked for him in me or in others? You know, where has he been at work in me so that when I come on Sunday, I am ready, you know? I want to express something to him about what he has meant to me just in that week because I have seen him, because I've been with him. And then that changes the attitude of my heart, right? Changes how I approach him. So there's something good about worship being this way that we approach God as we come through that gate. And then secondly, worship is about sacrifice. You know, when you get through the gate, the first thing that you saw was that altar. And so what would happen there is that people would bring their animals, and not just any animal, but they would pull the best out of the flock. You know, the best lamb, the unblemished lamb, the best goat, the best, whatever they had, they brought that with them. And that was the sacrifice at the altar. That was the place where they would say, God, I'm giving you the best that I have. Now, you got to understand, I'm sure that there were moments when they were like, I could get a lot of money for this lamb. Like, this is a really good one. Or we could have an amazing feast at our house and invite all of our friends and neighbors to come over and we could eat and it would be awesome. Like, there's all these other things that I could do with this lamb. But you know what? I'm going to bring this to God. Because God deserves the best of what I have. And I believe if I put this in the hands of God as my true act of worship, that my faithful God is going to take care of me. I trust him. And therefore, I give him the best of what I have. And I don't worry about those other thoughts that have come into my mind. And you see, in that way, it just reminds us that worship really is about making sacrifices even in our own life today to give up things to gain more of God in our life. Now, here's the deal. We don't have that altar anymore. You don't come in here and we sacrifice something on the altar and that would be crazy. Because the last sacrifice has already been made. Jesus dying on the cross, that was the last altar that needed to be made right there. That was the last perfect sacrifice made for all time so that we wouldn't have to continue to sacrifice these animals. Now, we follow Jesus. We walk in his steps in that same way, sacrificially, taking up our cross like Jesus calls us to do. You know, what is that thing that we have to give up in order to gain more of God in our life? In Hebrews 13:15, the writer there says, through Jesus, therefore, let us continually offer to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips that openly profess his name, and do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased. Like, that's what the sacrifice is, like, fruit of our praise to God. You know, how we treat other people as a result of being in the presence of God. And worship, by the way, also is not about us. It's not about preferences or, you know, like, is the air conditioning running good enough for me on Sunday morning? Was the coffee hot enough? Was my donut a little stale? Was the lighting just right? Was the volume okay for me? Was the chair comfortable? I'm sorry, I'm making fun of us now. But anyway, like, sometimes we get caught up in the peripheral things and forget about the main thing, which is that worship is not about me. It's about God. We've been reading this book called How to Worship a King, and in there he says this: when we make worship about us, what we communicate to God is that worship is for us. When worship is for us, then we become the object of worship, little gods in our own heart. So we don't want to do that. We want to get here and we want to focus on God and give him his rightful place. Am I right with that? You get what I'm saying with that? And like, I have to do the same thing on Sundays. I have to get all the distractions out of my mind. You know, a million things going on in my life personally or going on around here, and just get my mind and my heart put in that right direction so that I can be sure I'm giving that place, that rightful place, to my God, my Creator, my sustainer, my provider, my healer, everything I need. I give that to him. And then just this last thing that we kind of already said it, but worship is a response. It should be actually a natural response for every believer, like this thing that I cannot help but do. It's like any other response that we have to something in this life. Like our family, we have a little text group called Savage Family. Anyways, it's what our thing. But so within that group, a lot of times we're posting memes and pictures and funny videos. And like every now and again, one of my boys will post something on there, a hilarious video. And I could just be sitting there by myself, busting out laughing because it is hilarious and probably dumb and everything else. But anyway, it's funny. And my response to something like that is I just bust out laughing. Or if I'm with somebody and something tragic has happened, something hard or difficult, my response is I'm sad or I cry or my heart breaks for them. You know, like in our life, we have these responses to something that has moved us inside, right? When we are moved, somehow we respond to that in some form or fashion. And worship is the same way. It is because something has moved us, because I'm aware of God and who He is and what He has done. Back to verse 4, enter His gates with thanksgiving. Like, has God done something good in your life? Has God done something good this past week? Can you look around your life and find something good that God has done? Because if so, then we should come with thanksgiving for what He has done. It's like the minute we get through the doors, it's like, I am thankful, God, for who you are, for what you have done, and therefore I bring praise with me, you know. I am ready, and my automatic response is to give that to you. Because I know that you are at work in my life, you are at work in this world, you have done things I can't possibly imagine, you're going to do things that I can't imagine. And therefore, God, I tell you that I love you. I mean, ultimately what we're saying every time we gather here on Sunday is, God, I love you. I genuinely do. Above anything and everything else, I love you. And then we take that response, and what do we do with it? We go this afternoon, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we take that response with us throughout the week to work, to the ball field, to everything else. Because that attitude, that sense of what's in our hearts should just flow right out of us, you know. A continual response through our life. So I guess the challenge for us today, for this week, is just how will we respond to Him this week in everything that we do? In light of worshiping our King of Kings and Lord of Lords, how does that change us this week? Amen? All right, let's pray.